Oh, I left my paper. I need one of those papers. All right, recess over. Back to work. So sorry. I'm the only rabbi in the building today, so everything's got to be done. I apologize.
No.
Shh. Recess over. Back to work. Somebody left a phone. Beautiful gold iPhone. Going once. Going twice. LG. It's an LG phone. It's right here. So here's the issue. If I declare a place as a holy place, it's fine as long as nobody lives there. Because once you put people into a holy place, what are they going to do?
Screw it up.
No, screw it up is too simple. They're going to make it a place. They're going to bring all of their issues. They're going to bring their nationalism and their chauvinism and their prejudices and they're going to bring their dreams and their hopes and their aspirations and their sense of history. As long as the place is empty, as long as a place is just a dream by the waters of Babylon, there we sat and there we wept as we remembered Zion. As long as it's a dream, it's pristine, it's beautiful, it's sacred, it's powerful. I can imagine God living there. But once I bring people bring all of their shtick. Now some of that's profoundly beautiful. They bring children. They bring moments of healing and helping and gemilut chesed. That was Rabbi Yochanan's idea. They bring chesed. They bring acts of kindness to each other. But they also bring all their other stuff. So how do you live in a sacred place? How do you have a place that's a sacred place? And how do you have it a real place? I mean, the dream of Jerusalem is so much safer as long as it remains a dream. But the moment you put real people in the place, you end up with real problems, with real issues, with real conflicts. You see that going through the history? That's always been the problem. That's why Solomon asked the question at the very beginning. How can God live on earth? Because, the old Yiddish expression is, if God lived on earth, people would break his windows. You know that expression? No, it's an old Yiddish expression. If God lived on earth, their dogs would pee on his lawn. If God lived on earth, think about this. This is such a beautiful idea. As long as God lives in heaven, everything's perfect. We can look up and see perfection. But as long as you say, this is the Holy Land, what's holy about it? Right? There's all these news stories now about these kids who are on these birthright trips. Could someone help? Yeah, thanks, Steve. There's all these kids on they're leaving the birthright trips. You know what I'm talking about? Because they want to go on these, either breaking the silence or if not now, kind of crusades. The kids who believe that the birthright trips haven't shown them the real story of the conflict between Israel and the Palestinians. And Mama, come sit in front. You got a seat over here. Come on, what are you going in the back for? Come on. It's all right. Pearl, come on. You sit. You're happy. It's okay. You have a seat of honor in this place. You bother me. For 50 years, bother me. Since I'm 8 years old, you've been... She played mahjong with my mother, You know that mahjong is a Chinese word for schmooze? I don't think that... Mahjong. I really don't think this game really exists. I think it's all a bunch of Chinese gobbledygook, just so Jewish ladies can get together, eat C's candy bridge mix, and gossip about their grandchildren. I really think it's Chinese for schmooze, right? These little tiles, and each one says, let me tell you about my kid. Then there's another one says, oi, my kid. Another one says, oi, my husband. Anyway, that's another story. The question is, when Solomon asks the question, how can God live in the world? It's a question we're still debating. These kids go on these birthright trips and they leave in the middle as a political act because they want to say that Israel you haven't taught the story of the real Israel. But then that's the problem, you see, because if you approach Israel with the eyes of a holy place, you're going to be disappointed. And at the other hand, if you don't have that vision, you lose the aspiration. So in a certain sense, there's a basic tension, a dialectic, a dialogue here between the aspiration, the dream, the ideal of what Israel and what Jerusalem ought to be, holy place, and the reality. Right? When I lived in Jerusalem, I lived in Jerusalem for a couple of years as a student, and I go all the side. I didn't go this summer, but I usually go in the summer. I went in March. And like one of the things that I think is so amazing is that Jerusalem has a sanitation department. You know, it's worthy of a poem, right? I'd rather be a garbage man in Jerusalem than a rabbi in Reseda. No, but I mean, just, because you have trash. It's got to be fixed. I mean, you got to, I wanted one of the vests. I thought it was the greatest thing. I'm building redemption, Here's a great example of that. Turn to the last page. These are 3 poems. This is contemporary now, okay? Shortly before the 1967 war that Golda referenced, shortly before that war, a young Israeli singer by the name of Nomi Shemer won a contest, an Israeli song contest, with a beautiful song called Yerushalayim Shel Zahav. It was written before the war. It was sung and the contest was won before the war. But when the war happened and Jerusalem was, as it were, liberated, the song became a sort of national anthem. Avir Harim Kilon Kayan, right? And you can read her beautiful lyrics, right? Yerushalayim shel zahav shel nechoshet v'shel or alo l'chol china yichani kinor. Jerusalem of gold, of copper, and light. You ever been to Jerusalem at sunrise or sunset? That's the best time to go. And you stand on the tayelet, or you stand on your hotel roof, and you watch the colors all over the stones, and it's gold and copper and light. For your songs, I am a fiddler. Halo l'chol shirayach ani kinor. I am the fiddle. I am the violin for your songs. I am just a vessel of your songs, right? By day and by night, the fragrance of scented pine trees. Remember the cinnamon trees of the Talmud? The wine-clear mountain air. It does have beautiful air, by the way. From winds that greet the nearest evening, the sound of bells everywhere. In trees and stones, asleep, a slumber, a captive of its dreams. The temple sits inside our city, alone and unredeemed. This is before the war. Okay? Still today I sing your beauty, place crowns upon your walls. I am younger than your youngest child, a poet meek and small. But your name, a kiss of angels, burns fiery and bold. I'll not forget Yerushalayim, our city built of gold. To ancient sisters, to the city. Now, this 2 lines they added after the war. To ancient cisterns, to the city, we have come back again. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful song, right? Okay, that's Jerusalem the ideal, right? There was another song. There was another song, come in. There was another song written by a songwriter who's very well known in Israel, but not known at all in the diaspora. His name is Meir Ariel. Meir Ariel, how do you put him? In many ways, he is the Phil Oakes of Israel, if you know who Phil Oakes is. He wrote songs full of irony, full of protest. He wrote nice other songs too, but he wrote in this one. He was part of the Gedud. He was part of the crew that liberated Jerusalem, and he lost a bunch of friends. A bunch of guys were killed fighting for the city. They were killed. And like any soldier finishing a war, he sits down and asks himself, was it worth it? Was it worth one 25-year-old's life? Is it worth one 26-year-old husband or brother, one 27-year-old father or nephew? Is it really worth it? And he's listening to the whole country sing Yerushalayim Shel Zahav V'Shel Nechoshet V'Shel Or, all of Naomi Shemer's songs. And he gets hurt. It hurts him inside because he remembers the faces and the voices of his buddies, of the guys who had to fight and die. For what? So you could have your dream? So he writes another song called Yerushalayim Shel Barzel, Jerusalem of iron or steel, right? In your darkness, Jerusalem, we found a loving heart. He was one of the guys that liberated the city. When we came to widen your borders and to overwhelm the enemy, we became satiated of all its mortars. Then suddenly dawn broke. It just arose, not even white, and it was already red. Yerushalayim Shel Barzel, the Jerusalem of iron, of lead, and of darkness. Haven't we set your wall free? The strafed battalion broke forward, all of him in blood and smoke, and a mother came, and another mother, in the congregation of bereavement, bitter biting his lips, not without toil. The battalion continued fighting, till at the end the flag flapped above the house of bitterness. Jerusalem of iron, of lead, of darkness, heaven we set your wall free. The king's army dispersed, the sniper, his tower is silent. Now it is possible to go to the Dead Sea by the way of Jericho. Now it is possible to the Temple Mountain and to the western wall. Here you are in twilight, almost all of you gold, Jerusalem of gold, but also of lead, and also of dream. Forever be peace within your walls. It's a beautiful song, but it's a painful. You hear the pain in him? Before you celebrate, he says, before you go all poetic and crazy on me, think of my buddies. Think of the mothers who had to come and bury sons. And ask yourself, really? Is that really? That's really what you want? I mean, but that's the reality. And you'd say, well, in order to have the dream, you have to have the reality. And the reality becomes informed by the dream. Even he, at the end, Jerusalem of gold, but also of lead. Lead meaning bullets, of bullets. So you walk through the streets of Jerusalem, and that's what he sees. He sees the pockmarked walls, and he thinks of the fellows that he lost.
And that was
Yeah, right. Yeah, all these guys. But even in the operation in the city, the snipers, right? And finally, one more poem. One more poem, because I think you needed something to balance, right? So this is the great Yehuda Amichai. Well, who is Yehuda Amichai? He came to Israel in 1933 from Germany. And he was a poet, the poet laureate of Israel. He writes in easy Hebrew, by the way. You can read it even if your Hebrew is not terribly strong. And because his imagery and metaphors are relatively easy to penetrate. He lived in Yamin Moshe, which is the neighborhood, the old Jewish neighborhood that overlooks the old city. You know, and after 1967, it became liberated and he could see, right? But he also was a soldier, and he also had sons who were soldiers. So here's his idea. Jerusalem, port city on the shores of eternity. The Holy Mount is a huge ship, a luxurious pleasure liner. From the portholes of your western wall, happy saints look out. Travelers. Hasidim on the dock wave goodbye, shout hurrah till we meet again. She's always arriving and always sailing. And the gates and the docks and the policemen and the flags and the high masts of churches and mosques and the smokestacks of synagogues and the boats of praise, of mountains, of waves of mountain. The sounds of the ram's horn is heard. Still another sailed. Day of Atonement sailors in white uniforms, climbing among ladders and ropes of seasoned prayers. So what is Jerusalem for Amichai? What is it? It's what? It's not a city. Look again. What is it? What is it again? It's a great ship. It's a great ship. Now what is a ship doing? It's moving. It's moving. The idea of dynamism, of movement, you see? It's always moving. And where is it moving? It's moving toward eternity. It's always moving toward eternity. So Amichai's solution to this issue of how do you live in both the dream and the reality? You have to live in the reality because we live in a time and a place. But you have to live in the dream and in the symbol because that's what moves you, that's what pulls you forward through life. And the way that you do that is you imagine that this is something dynamic. This is a city that's moving. It's moving toward the dream. It's moving toward the dream. Mayor Ariel lives in the dream right now because he feels the bitterness of death. Nomi Shemer feels the attraction of the symbol of the dream. And Yehuda Amichai says you have to live in both. You have to sail the ship between here and there, between now and eternity, between what's real and what's aspirational. You can't let go of either one, or you've lost it. If a ship stops sailing, what happens to it? It sinks. It's only by moving forward that the ship continues to exist. This is always what Jerusalem has been. And all of the news, I'm going to suggest to you, when you hear all this controversy and conflict, all the news about Israel, getting a call. Tessa. Hello? All right, so I'm not going to answer. It's Shabbos, right? It's the controversies of Israel today. The controversies of Israel today, I want to suggest to you, is the contrast between the reality and the dream. And the question that Amichai's poem asks us is, are we getting closer to the dream or farther away? In which direction are we moving? Right? But all the controversy, all of the pain is this question of why haven't we gotten closer to the dream? Right? And tonight when we do Tisha B'Av, you're going to read in the text even... You're going to read in the text of the contrast between the reality and the dream. To live in both reality and dream is the classic Jewish position in the world. Jews have always been people living between here and there, between what we are and what we aspire to be. I wish everybody a really good Shabbos and a great summertime. We'll see each other in September.
Have a great trip.
Thank
Let
you.
me ask you this. You work for the LA Tourist Board and you're hosting freebies promoting visiting LA. Do you have to take people to Skid Row to show a complete picture of LA?